Welcome to Now We're Getting Somewhere. I'm Katie, and I'm a certified life coach, but I've also been a management consultant at McKinsey and a product manager at a tech startup. In other words, I know what it feels like to have a life that looks pretty good on paper, but doesn't feel as good as I want it to. I help my professional clients develop lives that are more meaningful, happy, and also more successful. And I want to share the same practical insights with you. Let's go. Hello, everybody. Happy August. Happy summer. When you get this, I will be with my family and my extended family in the woods at a family camp that we're all going to. I'm really excited because I convinced my whole extended family to go. So both my brothers and their wives and their kids. So we'll have lots of cousins, and my parents are going too. And it's this kind of camp where there's a handful of hours of like camp activities for the kids every day. So the parents can also have some time off to either, chill, swim in the lake, take a hike, or there's also camp activities for the parents. So like, I want to take a painting class or do archery or maybe learn how to mountain bike. We'll see. Anyway, very excited about it. Hope you're having a beautiful part of this summer season. Today, I want to talk about one aspect of finding clarity. That's another one of my beats, isn't it? How do you know what you want? How do you decide what to move towards in your life? Obviously, I talk to many, many people who are in the process of figuring out what they want about things big and small. Do they stay at the job or do they take a new one? Do they start the business or do they take time off? Do they start dating? Do they get divorced? Or even in these sort of small things, like how do they want to spend their weekend or how do they want to structure their workday? What do they want? And I was realizing recently that there is one thing that I am often listening for, and really, if we're being precise here, that I'm feeling for in those conversations. And until I hear it and feel it from them, it is unlikely that we will get to clarity. So I thought it maybe made sense for me to make a podcast about this thing that I am listening and feeling for, because maybe it would help you too in any kind of clarity question that you're in. When I share it, which I will in truly just a minute, it's going to seem a little simple, but like most things, it's both simple and complex. And you also may have some feelings and reactions to it. So stay with me and I will address it all. But first, I'm going to give you the takeaway up front. That one thing that I said that I'm listening for, that I'm feeling for, that tends to anchor us if my client is kind of swirling all around in not knowing what they want. It is because I want to. Because I want to. It usually comes out as a blurt, from somewhere kind of in the gut, because I want to. And if we can find that because I want to, it tends to ground us in a very, very useful way. It tends to cut through the noise and be the beginning of actually knowing a path forward. So that's the high level takeaway I'm going to offer you today, that because I want to is a reason, and often it's the best reason. So that is my intro. But now I want us to get to the meat of the podcast. So first, I want to address some of the objections you might already be having to this idea and clarify what I mean when I talk about this because I want to blurt. Then I'm going to share a quick client story, and then I'm going to share a personal story about me, about a part of my life that I don't really think I've talked about publicly before, where I have my own because I want to. Then I'm going to finish this off with a little because I want to FAQ at the end. And then we'll call it a day. Okay, so first let's just address the objections that you're probably already having. I think all of us smart, thoughtful people, which if you're listening to this, you likely are, we tend to have a reaction along the lines of, because I want to is just selfish or foolish, and one can't just live on fairy dust and fruit snacks and because I want to. Or to give an even stronger, more steel man version of that argument, you could say, well, I want things all day. I want to spend 12 hours on Instagram and I want to only eat meals that DoorDash provides for me. But if I do that, that's not actually good for me. So that's where I think we need to bring in the nuance. I think that because I want to can exist on at least two levels. There is a surface level because I want to. I would call this the 5-year-olds because I want to, because I have 5-year-olds, and they want a lot of things that are not that good for them. That's true. They would like to eat only vitamin gummies or other gummies for all of their meals, and they would like to stay up late every day to the point that they are tantruming from exhaustion. And my job is to not let them do that. I would consider those kinds of desires to be a surface level because I want to, because it literally feels higher up in my body somatically. It's like a buzziness in my chest or my back. It can certainly be very compelling. I mean, on some level, I would say that most compulsions that we, or at least I have as an adult, for screens or treats or everything else, obviously that's also a because I want to, right? I want to do them. But the because I want to there is faster and hotter and more buzzy. The second kind of because I want to, the one that I'm talking about here, it's deeper. It's from the gut. It's like, ugh. And if you could see me on the other side of this podcast, it's like I'm making this motion where I kind of just like release something into the world from my gut. And when I am sitting with my clients and we finally hear that because I want to, it will often feel like a blurt or a burst coming out of their belly or something in that kind of region. It's the because I want to take a rest, or because I just want to start that company, or because I don't want to have a baby right now. And then we both sit there after that blurt and we're like, wow, there it is. And there's a felt sense, again, a somatic sense in my body for sure, and usually in theirs too by that point, like, oh yeah, now we're hooked up to something deep. Now we hit it. And to be very clear, I'm not saying that every single blurt should be heeded immediately at 100% level without also consulting our brains. I'm not saying, yes, if your gut tells you because I want to, you should quit your job tomorrow, trust it, leap and life will catch you. If you have been around these parts for a while, you know that I think that there's more nuance than that. But I do think that because I want to, that's when we've kind of finally hit the gold. That's when we have really important directional information, which we will then take action on in a bunch of different ways, depending on circumstances and pre-existing commitments and all kinds of other important factors. On some level, I believe that all good reasons at the end of the day, all reasons about making that tough job decision or that tough relationship decision or that tough financial or family or friendship decision, any good reason that kind of sticks in your belly and can last the tornadoes and challenges and unexpected outcomes and timelines that take 16 times as long as you expected, all of those, if they have any kind of enduring power, they all ultimately come with a seed of because I want to. Because look, most of us can come up with a quote unquote good case for both decisions or all 16 of the possibilities here. If you want to buy the house or sell the house or quit the job or change the job or hire the nanny or not hire the nanny or whatever, there's a good case to be made in either direction. And it will be one reason that ultimately tips the scales in a way that feels right in your gut. And it's not going to be a should. It's going to be something that has a because I want to attached to it. And to be clear, because I want to's are not always selfish. Sometimes it's just like because I just want to give this person something that they need. But there's still that oomph attached to it. And to pull back the curtain a little bit on me as a coach, I feel in some client sessions that like 90% of what I'm doing is just listening to my clients tell me all their reasons. And I'm waiting for that hit me in the gut, grounding feeling of because I want to. And if they don't give me that, my job is to poke them until they do. Okay, so let's make all of this a little bit more concrete and a little bit less theoretical. I'm going to give a real client example, and then I will give a real personal example from my life. So client example first. I was working with a client recently. She had some serious issues at her workplace, not about her, but serious kind of structural problems and big changes that had been made that made her wonder whether she should switch jobs. And she had some pretty good incentives to leave. Like some of her former colleagues who had already left were talking about recruiting her. But she was also nervous about leaving. She didn't want to leave some of her team members and the folks that she managed in a lurch. And then there were a bunch of logistical and family considerations. So as for many of us, there was a lot of complexity in every direction, as is often true for real life decisions. And she was telling me about all her reasons, like, this is why this is a good financial decision, and this is why it could be strategically very wise, and this is why it would help other people, and this is why it might be strategically wise. And, and the longer she went on, the more that my heart and my belly were kind of clenching a little bit, because I and my body still couldn't feel into anything to hold on to. My body felt kind of tossed around. And often my body in these conversations is kind of mirroring what a client might be feeling. And my sense was that she also seemed kind of unmoored, kind of swirled around by all these reasons in every direction. And eventually she looked at me because my unmooredness was kind of on my face at this point. She was like, "What?" And I said, "Okay, I get all the reasons that this could be good, and also all the reasons that it could be bad, strategically, for your team, whatever. But in my body, I still haven't quite felt into what you want. I haven't heard that part yet. What do you want?" Oh, even as I'm telling this, I can feel it. There was this big release for her in hearing that reaction from me, because almost as soon as I said it, she said to me, and I could see her shoulders lower as she said it. I could see it kind of come from her gut forward. And she was like, "Honestly, I don't want to leave right now." And it turned out that was the blurt. That was the because I want to of it all. She didn't want to leave. And of course, as I said, there were very good reasons to stay, but also there were good reasons to go. So what actually ended up tipping the scales for her was where her "because I want to" was. And for her, that was that she didn't want to leave. And once she could anchor in that, everything else felt a lot less swirly. So that is my client example. And now I also wanted to share a personal example. It's a little bit of a vulnerable one, and one that I haven't shared publicly yet, but it just felt so true for this point that I wanted to make that I felt like it was time to talk about it a little bit. So my husband and I, for the past couple of years, have been in discussions about whether or not to have another baby. We have 2 wonderful boys, and, is our family complete or not? And in fairness, my husband has been pretty consistent that if it were up to him, he'd prefer if we were done, if we were complete. But as the amazingly wonderful partner that he is, he's willing to support me and the family if I would prefer to, go for one more. And I have been kind of all over the place. There are a lot of good reasons, from my perspective, in both directions. Some which are quite personal that I won't go into, but it's probably not so hard to imagine what at least some of them might be. And I felt confused. Clarity has not come easily to me for this. And part of what complicates this for me and for us is that I have a condition called premature ovarian insufficiency, or some doctors also call it premature ovarian failure, which is a pretty brutal name. Basically, I was told when I was 30 that my hormones and my egg reserve situation looked like that of a 40-year-old, which, if you've been in the fertility world at all, you know that is not great. So I got this diagnosis when I was 30. And at the time, I was freshly married, only months before, and Gil and I both sat down with a fertility doctor, and the fertility doctor immediately brought up donor eggs. And he said that it was highly likely that I would not be able to have children with my own eggs, which is a very tough conversation to hear. And in a miracle of miracles, I did get pregnant with my own eggs when I was 31. But as anyone who has been in the fertility world knows, fertility only gets worse over time. So I'm 37 now. My fertility situation is clearly significantly worse than it was even at 30. And if you've also been in the fertility world at all, you know that there are a ton of things that a person can do to try to boost their fertility. So a lot of my swirl the past few years has been, if I really want to get pregnant, I need to do all these things. I need to radically change my diet. I need to do acupuncture twice a week. I need to never touch another receipt. That's the thing people do. And maybe we need to do IUI and IVF. And even though IVF isn't actually that useful for my condition, and all of this begins to feel both quite expensive and quite exhausting. So there's been a lot of swirl. And to compound it, if you know a bit about my story, we had a really tough sort of couple years with one of my sons who had and has a lot of medical and developmental challenges. And it really took a toll on my husband and I, both in terms of logistics and then also just the anxiety of it all. And we were both really burnt out and are only really now in the past kind of year plus feeling more back to life. So now I'm going to go take on this huge energy and financial expense, both with potentially raising a baby, but also with all that might be required to even get pregnant with that baby. So all of that's contributing to this world. There's lots of swirl. You can hear it, right? And more recently, I just said to myself, just landing in that, let's cut through this swirl. Let's cut through the noise. Where is the because I want to here? Where's that blurt from the gut about because I want to? And as I sat with it, I realized that in this exact season, with my exact energy reserves, my because I want to is that I do want to try for one more child. But my other because I want to, my other blurt from the gut is that I don't want to make myself crazy at all to go for this. I only want to pursue this in ways that allow me to keep my peace, to feel happy and present to myself and my kids and my husband and my business and my friends and everything else that I love. So I will likely not be visiting a fertility doctor. I will likely not be doing a ton of fancy or energetically or financially expensive things. And the result of that, probably more likely than not, is that we won't have another child. Because again, my fertility was pretty bad at 30 and then 31 when I got pregnant with my boys, and now I'm 37. I mean, I'm just not setting myself up for success if I'm not willing to do a lot of that fancy business. But again, this is what I want to do. This is the gut, the blurt, the because I want to of it all. And I wanted to share this personal example because I think it speaks to the fact that because I want to may have conflicting parts to it. My because I want to is not because I want to have a baby, I'm going to do everything in my power. My because I want to is also not because I don't want to exhaust myself, we're going to call ourselves complete as is. I really, really wanted to underline that for all of you because I think a lot of real life blurts of because I want to's hold complexity like this. And because of the complexity, they may not always, at least initially, make sense to our logical brains. And that second part also feels really important to highlight because, for the record, my logical brain feels very confused by this approach. Like, my logical brain says to me all the time, like, well, if you really want another child, shouldn't you go all in, full forces, no holds barred, get her done? Like, that's what feels logical to my brain. And obviously, we could all make the argument for doing it in the way that I want to do it. But the point is that there are good arguments in every direction, and that's why I was lost in the swirl for so long. And my answer for that, again, is that when I'm most deeply in touch with myself, I know how I want to do it. And as I've sort of pointed to, again, I may end up with an outcome that I don't prefer because, of course, what I really want is to get pregnant doing it exactly my way, and it may not work out that way. But that's, to me, a big piece of why it feels so important to find the because I want to. Because since I want to do it in this way, when I'm in touch with that, that feels kind of like the meal that can fill me up and power me through, hopefully, through some of these potential challenges and difficult outcomes. And if I didn't have that, if I was, either my logical brain had convinced me to go all in or my logical brain had convinced me to stop trying, I don't think I'd have enough oomph or something to kind of sustain me through the disappointment of honestly either of those strategies, because there's also downsides to either of those strategies as well. So I share this story because it's been such a key example in my own recent life of a because I want to. And of course, I am so lucky that my wonderful husband is supportive of this and this plan. I think, for the record, the me keeping myself sane part is actually pretty important to him because, happy spouse, happy house. And if I kind of destroyed myself energetically to go after this, after the years we've had, I think he would have a lot more pause. But also, for the record, I asked him if I could talk about this because it is quite personal and it includes him too. And he said it was okay. So thank you, wonderful Gil, for that one. Okay, so now that I have shared these two specific examples, I wanted to close this out with two quick FAQs because I want to FAQs. So the first FAQ is, what if I can't find that because I want to blurt from the gut? And on some level, this is the money question, right? The truest answer I can give to this is that there's so many different ways in terms of finding it. So many different ways to get in touch with yourself, to find that trustworthy voice. So feel free to go back and listen to my other podcasts or blog posts about clarity and making decisions, because I do write and talk about this a lot. For this podcast, I'm going to suggest one specific practice. Of course, again, of many. I'm going to recommend spending a bit of time reflecting on all your reasons, all of those swirly reasons. You could write them down through journaling. You could say them out loud using my voice memo method. That was 2 podcasts ago, back in podcast, I think 59. So just let all your reasons come up, kind of swirl around, spend some time in that muck. And then imagine me sitting with you and lovingly, but also kind of firmly poking at you and saying, okay, but where's the because I want to here? Where is that? And try to kind of feel into your gut and let that blurt out if you can. Feel kind of what wants to jump out of there. And know that it might not be one clean, exact, actionable answer. It might also surprise you or feel only tangentially related. But listen to that too. And if you still can't find it, I'll also say, obviously, highly recommend hiring me to be your life coach to help with this. Or I'm also in the very early stages of putting together a course on clarity and how to kind of figure out what you want, which I'm hoping will have basically every technique I know in an organized kind of step-by-step way. So that's coming together very slowly because my primary attention is always with my one-on-one clients, but I'm trying to get it done. And at some point I will have that for you. I'm just doing a little teaser. Look at me doing a teaser. Okay, so that's FAQ number 1. What if I can't find the because I want to? And then FAQ number 2 is, what if the because I want to blurt is because I don't want to decide now? Oh, I'm just letting that one land on my body. I want to name this one because that's totally a thing. And that's valid and real. Not all answers are available to us exactly when we want them. Some are emerging, and it's important to, again, be aware that that's real and respect that. Sometimes that's the most truthful thing to blurt out of us. So then you may just have to stay in that question, by which I mean, keep asking yourself that question and check in over time and check in with yourself about what can I do now as I wait for that fuller answer to arrive. Maybe there will be a blurt about that. But I wanted to be honest and call out that not all answers are available on exactly the timeline that we wish they were available, because we're not robots. And finally, one last point before we finish, I also want to say that sensing into this because I want to, that's a skill. It's like a muscle that gets stronger over time or can atrophy if you don't use it. Many of us walk around not super in touch with actually what we want. So the best advice I would give, the advice that I'm frequently giving to my clients, is to practice it. Practice it by listening for that blurt in every decision in your day or in your week. There's going to be a blurt for big and small decisions if you're listening for it, even just like, what do I want to do this morning? And the more that you do it, the easier it is to hear. Okay, team, that's the podcast. I'd love to hear how it goes for you, what you discover. What's your because I want to? Email me or even DM me on Instagram. Let me know. As always, I'm rooting for you. You got this. If you really want to change in a meaningful, lasting way, that's when you need a life coach. Every client I've worked with has had incredibly personalized reasons why they're in the tired or anxious or stuck or uninspired state they're in. Working with me can help you identify those roadblocks, which are usually blind spots that you genuinely cannot see, and implement a profoundly customized, doable plan for overcoming them. I have a very small, high-end, one-on-one coaching practice. If you'd like to be my next client, reach out at katiesiever.com. I'd love to meet you.